Hello BookTube, I'm Peg and welcome to my channel. I'm here today to talk about Canadian fiction. The Governor General's Prize for Literary Prize is going to be awarded tomorrow, November 1st, and I'm here to talk about the fiction part of it, the shortlist, and who I think should win. First of all, a little bit about this prize. It's actually one of several prizes, literary prizes, that are going on right now in Canada. There's also the Giller Prize that the shortlist has already been put out, and it'll be awarded on November 20th. So I'm actually planning to read those also and let you know about those. This is the first time I've ever read the Canadian prize lists, and I have to say I'm really impressed. There were some great books on this and not really any really bad ones. There was an article in this morning's is it Globe and Mail or Mail and Globe, anyway, Canadian newspaper, that talked about the great amount of book prizes there are now in Canada and named a few I'd never heard of. I thought it was an interesting article, so I'm putting a link to it at the bottom, and also links to both of the prizes, the one I'm talking about today and the Giller, which will be coming up, so you can get a little knowledge on the books that are up for those and have a chance to read them if you decide to. A little bit about this prize. The Governor General's Literary Awards were started in 1936 and are sponsored by the Canadian Council of the Arts, so it's actually a government award. Began in 1936. It is supposedly Canadians' best books in both English and French. There's a section of English and French, and there's 7 different categories in each. I'm only dealing with the fiction today, the 5 books on that list. It will be announced tomorrow sometime. I don't think there's a special event or time. I'll just keep checking the web to see about it. There are some events scheduled afterwards in Canada, with the winners of all 7 categories in both languages will be participating in several events with book selling and book signing and reading from their book, which would be interested if you could make that, and if you're interested. Okay, without further ado, I'm going to just get to the books. Okay, the first one I'm here to talk about is called Uncertain Weights and Measures. And oh, that's awful. All right. Terrible picture here. How in the world am I going to get it? All right. Well, you can't really see it, but actually, yeah. There is a brain. That's a shape of a brain in there, that white thing there, that maybe shows the shape of the brain, which I'll get to what's that's indicative of in just a minute. This takes place, it's a historical fiction novel by Jocelyn Parr, who I really couldn't find out anything about. In fact, the book itself is only available on Kindle here in the U.S. and not in hard copy, or I have the hard copy. Anyway, it's really a historical fiction. It takes place in 1920s Moscow and deals with a young Russian woman named Tatiana, who's a scientist. And she works in a famous laboratory there doing research, which this laboratory actually really existed, and the people in there really existed, and there's many events that happen in the laboratory, including a strange death. But one of the main things, they are studying the nature of genius, and to do that, they get famous people or smart people's brains, and that's why you see the brain, and cut it up and dissect it and look at it under the microscope to see if they can figure out if a genius's brain is any different than anybody else's. Okay, next we have The Lost in September by Kathleen Winter. This author wrote a book called Annabelle about, I think, around 2010. that won several Canadian awards and was actually long listed on the Orange Prize. What was the Orange Prize in England then? It then became the Bailey's Prize, and it's now the Women's Fiction Prize, I believe it's going to be called from now on. Okay, anyway, this is actually, you might say, a time travel novel. It involves an actual character, a General Wolfe, who was an English general who was actually killed in the battlefield in the 1700s in Quebec, in the war there. But he in this story comes back as a young man to Montreal. It's a very involved story of why he's back and what he's looking for, and it's quite zany and fun, actually. And it's a fun book to see his this guy from 1700s back coming into the contemporary world and time travel and looking for the mystery or solving the mystery that he has to look into. So this was quite interesting and different. Next we have The Water Beetles by Michael Kahn. This is his first novel. His father is from Hong Kong, his mother's Canadian, and this book is partially based on an actual experience of his father when he lived as a child in Hong Kong. It portrays a Chinese family in Hong Kong, a very well-to-do family, at the first at least. And in 1941, they are there when the Japanese Empire overruns Hong Kong and takes charge. And it's a portrait of their life and how it changed under the Japanese rule there. Again, I learned a lot about historical things in other countries in this one. Okay, next I have We'll All Be Burning Our Beds Some Night by Joel Thomas Hinds. This author is quite experienced in a multidisciplinary way. He is active in the film and TV industry in Canada as both a writer and an actor, and has even been a director. He's written several screenplays, award-winning, and books. This one deals with a young man named Johnny in England, who, no, not in England, in Canada, who, a poor guy he's kind of a never do well, you might say. He's been in some trouble. He comes from a real dysfunctional family, and it opens with him awaiting a trial that he really is probably innocent of that, if not other crimes. And he does manage to get off that, and he takes off on a wild trip across Canada, hitchhiking and other means of transportation. And this is just filled with what I would call black humor, but also is kind of realistic about what a young person in these circumstances and with this kind of life history must go through. So I would say it was very realistic and well done. Okay, we're getting to my favorite, which is, I'm surprised it is, but it's All the Beloved Ghosts by Alison Macleod. You know what? It's a short story collection. I cannot believe that it's my favorite, because I usually don't even read short stories. Not that I dislike them, but it seems like once you get into them and really get into them, then they're ending and just sometimes usually aren't as satisfying as novels. But this one is just terrific. First of all, I should say that Alison Macleod has written other books. The one called The Unexploded was on the Man Booker Shortlist a few years ago, and she does live in England now, though she's Canadian. Now, the stories themselves, I don't even really know how to talk about short stories since I don't usually read them, but all I can say is they just affected me deeply. They were from all different time periods, different countries. There was not really a set subject, but they all would just I think, very effectively done. The only thing I can compare it with is her countrywoman, Alice Munro, uh, who writes short stories, and that the fact that they're at first appear quite simple stories, but once you read them a second time and even a third, different levels appear, symbols and different meanings appear, which it's always fun to parse out a story like that. Now, I'm not the only one that thinks she's a great writer. On the back, we have comments, accolades actually, from the Times Literary Supplement, The Guardian, The Independent, and The Observer. So I am putting my money, if I could legally bet, on this one to win tomorrow, though they're all really good and enjoyable. And so I'm hoping that you all have some comments. Maybe some of you have read some of these. So I'll be watching to see who the winner is tomorrow. Thanks. Bye.